Geometric internals update for Sprocket drops. I sleep. They added track tension.
Code red. We're at Sprocket. Sprocket code red. Code red. We're at Sprocket code red.
All hands on deck. I need all of you. All you warriors now. Sprocket has just released its most important update yet. No. I'm not talking about the geometric internals update. That dropped a while ago. I already missed the hype bus on that. I can't make a video about that anymore. It's too late. They added freaking track tension. This proves my collaborative theory. I've been saying this for years. No one believed me. That Nicholas Moore and the Chieftain is personally helping Hamish develop Sprocket, and he has finally implemented his dream feature, the feature we've all been asking for. More so than machine guns, more so than multi-track tanks, more so than anything else. Track tension. It's fucking here! Finally! Now look, I know, I get what you guys are gonna say. Etta, why didn't you make a update video when the geometric internals update dropped? Well, here's the thing. Number one, I fully had planned to. The problem was, the update didn't drop, so to speak. Hamish just added the feature to the experimental branch of the game. And it was there, it was functional, but it had a lot of bugs, and also you can't fight any other tanks with it. Like, the scenarios are gone, the obstacle course sandbox is gone, like the only place that you can build your tanks is on the flat map. Like, a lot of the features of the game were cut out, and Hamish is rebuilding them for geometric internals. I wanted to wait to make my video on geometric internals until the game as it was prior has been restored with geometric internals. However, I'm not even kidding, I saw this announcement and I freaked the frick out, dude, and this is worth it. This is worth making a video on. This right freaking here. So of course, I instantly set out to make a tank in Sprocket. So, as I said before, believe it or not, this is actually not my first time making a tank with the geometric internals update of Sprocket. And in fact, the very first thing that I did hopping into this game is I wanted to see what all my old tanks looked like with the new track tension. As you can see, this is a tank that I built on livestream. So if you have not subscribed to Edit320 Live quite yet and you don't tune in for the streams 3 times a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 5 p.m. EST, sometimes a little bit earlier, then please go ahead and do that, because streaming is a lot of fun and I really enjoy it, and there's a lot of Edit320 lore that gets dropped on streams, and we do a lot of really fun stuff. Basically, whenever I'm not making content, I'm adding to the repertoire of live streams. Edda, what are you doing in honor of Gay Month? I'm kissing boys. Wow, great, good job. Oh, I don't know why that one got me good. That one got me good. Whew, wow, that was a good one. I think this was the first tank I ever built when Geometric Internals update came out. But what you're seeing me here doing is learning how the new crew member positioning system works. Previously, the crew positions were all very preset, but Hamish added this new functionality that makes them a lot more positionable, where each of the individual limbs, and you position each one individually, which I really like conceptually, but the current system is very finicky. You're going to spend a lot of time getting your crew members to be like perfectly positioned in this game. But hey, I mean, if there's one thing that this game really does well, it is sinking in hours and hours and hours of time for pure perfection. So yeah, I basically just repositioned the crew members here so that I could get the build working and check out the new track tension. Initially, I thought something was broken. I thought maybe this was like, you know, it's an old design from the previous, before this update came out, that was not behaving well with the new track tension systems. But then I sort of figured it out. It was because of the return rollers. There you see me doing a little test there without return rollers. I had the return rollers enabled, and then I was looking for them. I was like, well, where the fuck are the return rollers? I can't see them. And of course, I forgot, because this build is based on a Panther Tiger type thing mixed in with American patent tanks. I totally forgot that I pulled a Panther and included that sneaky return roller at the very front of the vehicle. So it seems to me now that with this experiment, I have proven that the track sag is very much based upon where your return rollers are. So I have that one return roller up at the front, and because of that, the game is not really bothering to model the track collision with the actual road wheels, because the game assumes, oh, well, we don't need to care about the road wheels now because now it's got return rollers. So if you disable return rollers, the collision point is with the road wheels. But if you enable return rollers, the collision point is with the return rollers. So then if your return rollers are in a place where the track will still sag over the wheels, again, like Panther, the wheels are just not considered at all anymore because the return rollers are enabled. So not sure if Hamish is aware of that. I don't know if I'd call it a bug, but that's the way the game currently works. So I just implemented return rollers legitimately to get the tension working, and oh my god, it is everything I wanted and more. It looks so freaking good. I have no idea how Hamish managed to get track tension to look even better in this game than it does in War Thunder. I know that's saying a lot. I know that's really like putting this high up on praise. Maybe it's just because it's my own tank design. It's a tank that I designed, and I get to see the tracks on my vehicle actually work properly. It is so incredibly satisfying. I remember seeing a Reddit post a long time ago about what is like the one part of a tank that you think like really identifies it the most? Is it the body? Is it the turret? Is it the suspension? Whatever. What is it? I think over the years I've really started to discover for me that it's the suspension. To me, the suspension of a tank is so intertwined with its silhouette. I think it's just one of the biggest identifiers. You can see me also fiddling with yet another tank that we designed, again, on stream. This was a Belgian tank, as you can tell by the markings. It was really neat to mess with the driver of this tank because I had very specifically built an interior for the driver, and actually for this entire tank. I've said before, and I said it on stream, that when the game is out, my goal is by then to have acquired the skills and the know-how and the patience to design and build a fully 100% modeled tank, interior and exterior. Sadly, we're not gonna make a lot of progress towards that goal in today's build, but yeah, the last two builds that I've done on stream, I have. And I think they're worth checking out if you're interested. And so here we begin. So as always with my Sprocket builds, the first thing I do is look for reference. And this one, I pretty much instantly had in my head what I actually wanted to build. I wanted to build something akin to the Nuberfahrzeug, which I could have totally butchered that pronunciation, but I wanted a interwar, because of course I do, everything I build is interwar, German land ship, I suppose? I would call it a land ship, but yeah, something with multiple turrets and something that is ginormous. I thought it would create an interesting point for suspension testing. It could create a unique suspension system. So of course, if this thing is going to be a multi-turreted monster, then I instantly build it high, and I start adding those layers. I make it like a tiered cake. I knew that I wanted 2 turrets on the back, a turret on the front, and then a large turret on the top. I don't know at first, like, oh, is this going to be like a machine gun turret? Are these going to be cannons? Like, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with them or what guns they're going to have, or, you know, we'll come up with that as we go. But for now, I just knew I wanted to get the basic outline of the vehicle done first. Like, what is it gonna look like? What's the silhouette? I wanted to get the silhouette done first. How about that? That makes me look smart. So I get the basic design pretty much figured out. I toy with the idea of another turret on the front of the tank, but I pretty quickly then have to start figuring out, like, okay, well then where's the driver gonna go? And I think if I just make the tank big enough, I can still fit all the things that I want. But spoiler alert, I'll end up abandoning this second turret on the front just for the first one because I need space for the driver. And it was here that I have a really, really fun idea that ends up really giving the whole tank shape. I make a decision as to what the driver's compartment is going to look like. But since I'm taking inspiration from the big multi-gun tank monsters, I decide that the M3 Lee would be an interesting inspiration point. So I start trying to build the M3 Lee's front side, and then my idea is that I can build the front of the M3, and then sort of on top of that driver's area, I can still put my 2 turrets. It ends up taking shape later, but at first I'm still very much deciding what the heck this is going to look like. But of course, to build the M3, we first have to build the M2, because yes, the M3 Lee is essentially just an evolved M2, and the entire front hull design of the M3 is just the M2, but they moved the driver slightly to the left, and then did that huge cutout in the hull for the hull-mounted cannon. So I figured I might as well go through the same sort of development process. So first I look up reference images of an M2, and I tried to build the front hull of an M2. And then just whatever asymmetry comes out of that with the turret position here, I I do naturally. It's at this point that I'm really starting to figure out that I think I'm not going to be able to get away with 2 turrets on the front. I'm going to keep that one on the left there and then just build around it and still have our driver in the center there, in that center position, and then to his back left, kind of cramped, but still on there, is going to be that front turret position. It's around this time as well that I get the idea of a hull-mounted gun on the front, again, like a B1 BIS or the M3 Lee. I think this design was definitely more so than a lot of the other tanks I've made, a lesson in geometry, and specifically messing with geometry in Sprocket. There was definitely a lot of holding my breath and just molding shit until it looked right in this build, which of course means that there's a lot of point confusion that ends up happening, a lot of splitting, and the usual Sprocket confusion. Now off trying to design that M3 Lee hull-mounted cannon part. So yeah, I mean, literally the M3 Lee is just the front of the M2, but then they just cut open the right side and plonged that hull-mounted gun. And so my plans were pretty much identical. Gonna take this front end that I've built and then just remove the right side. But of course, that is a lot easier said than done, especially if you intend to keep the overall shape, you know, without just deleting everything. But step one, obviously, is to delete the side there, and then I tried figuring out how to push it in, but it's just, there's too many points connected to too many other things. I really should have done, I think, an extrusion here at some point, maybe, or I don't know, to be honest. Like, yeah, the geometry is just the nature of what I was trying to build, but thankfully I remembered the feature of the game in which you can extrude points, not just faces. And so I extrude the point there, and I basically just rebuild the side of the tank. I have to delete all those faces that are, you know, attached wrongly to the side of the tank that had been defined before, and then grabbing the sides of the tank and pulling them all back out and trying to line everything back up again single-handedly, by hand, by eye. And I'm sure this is a perfect moment for true Sprocket builders, people who do this all the time, to chime in and comment something about how I am like the least efficient Sprocket worker of all time. And yes, I very much agree. I do things backwards and insanely manually when I really don't have to. But eventually, just through chopping out enough things, I kind of get the shape that I'm looking for, and end up actually successfully cutting out the side here, like I intended. Here, I'm gonna try to build that little the little front gun sponson section, because even looking at the M3 Lee, you can kind of tell that like that front gun is very much, it's a sponson structure that has been you know, botched on there. Again, it's literally, they took the M2, they cut open the right side, and then they just added this sponson structure to it. And so I'm basically trying to build that little sponson segment here, and then I'm going to, just as I imagine they did it on the M2, making the M3, just, you know, chuck it on there. Pretty quickly, I'll learn the error of my ways in doing it this way, though, because obviously we want this to be turret, or we want the cannon to be able to move in this. To make that happen, we have to put a turret here, but a turret is its own structure, and yeah, things just get a little bit wacky. End up expanding this position just a little bit to make it wider, because I don't think there's enough room for the gun, and especially not specifically for a person to fit inside of it. Yeah, again, like one of the things that I really learned, I mean, I learned this every time I built the tank, but in this tank in particular, yeah, considering the crew, having crew space inside the vehicle is really tough. You can build whatever you want, you can build it and be like, yeah, like that looks good, like I think a person would be able to fit in there, and then you actually try to put a crew member in there, and then you're like, oh my god, like this is not big enough for a person, and you basically just have to redesign the whole thing. It's happened to me many times because, yeah, your eyes are just not quite, I just can't get the scale right. And then, yeah, this is the moment when I realize, how am I going to get the gun to traverse left and right? And I realize, like, okay, well, wait, this needs to be a turret. Like, essentially, there has to be a turret ring in here that this block can rotate left and right on. But then I realize, if I place this entire block on a turret ring and put it in there, then the entire block is going to spin left and right, and it's going to clip in with the hull, and it's gonna look not right at all. So then this leads me to just basically rethink this entire process yet again, and I end up building a proper, like, actually from the hull, I build a superstructure piece, and then this giant, like, you know, block that I currently have on the turret ring, the thing that's actually gonna rotate and traverse, just becomes the gun shield. I end up just molding it into a gun shield, and then the gun shield is placed onto the static block of the hull, which is, to be fair, I do believe how it was on the M3 anyways. I'm pretty proud of myself just on the first like go of this, how the gun shield traverses around this hull sponson. Obviously, we'll have to clean up those gaps that show up as a result of the gun shield traversing left and right, but all that is just reshaping the sponson structure again to actually be all-encompassing, to actually close up at the front. And it's finally time to attack the suspension. Again, I start off wanting to build, I definitely want interleaved road wheels because this is Germany, but then also, I have this idea of interleaved bogies. Like, what if you could do interleaving bogie suspension? I was curious. Even if it didn't end up looking good, I just wanted to know if it was possible. Spoiler alert, it's not. I actually end up encountering a bug with the suspension because of the way I do it. I kind of end up breaking the game, specifically breaking this build, unfortunately, where I give it interleave suspension, select grouping, and I up the grouping, and now create groups of road wheels while having interleaved enabled. It just breaks, and both all the options for editing with interleave road wheels and also all the options for messing with groupings both just totally disappear, and the tank, like, it's broken. I try reloading the design, I try restarting the game, I try everything, and it's just broken. So I basically just end up stuck with just a generic interleave road wheel suspension system, which I am upset by, but also I can make it work, we can make it look good, but yeah, I was really looking forward to trying something like that. But yeah, definitely a big bug to report to Hamish. If you enable interleave, like you have interleave suspension, either just get rid of the grouping option, because I understand how interleave bogey type group suspensions don't make any sense, or just, yeah, please fix it so that it doesn't break when you do that. Then I think it's finally time to mold the turret positions, both the one on the front, the one on the top, and the ones on the back, just molding the turrets, finally. The generic turret shapes are obviously not what I want. It took me a while to figure out what turret shapes I wanted. If I was going to take inspiration from Germans, if I was going to take inspiration from Americans, I wasn't totally sure. For this first turret, I decide I want to do something Panzer IV-ish. I am kind of looking at the turret design, because the Nuba Fazold does have a front-mounted turret. I'm kind of looking at that design a little bit, thinking that looks kind of neat. I think I'm definitely going more German-inspired for this one. But then as I'm molding it, I do just kind of end up making my own. And I kind of figure, now, like the Panzer IV turret design is very iconic, very recognizable, very unique. And so if I'm going to make any of these turrets the Panzer IV's turret, it should be the top turret, the top middle turret that everyone will be able to see and will be the centerpiece of the whole thing. So I decide, okay, that one's going to end up being the Panzer IV's turret, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And then this one, I'll just go nuts with this. I'll just have some fun with this and see what I can make. I pull up an image of the M3 Lee's turret, like the tiny one on the roof of the tank with the 37 in there, because I then decide that I actually do want a 37mm cannon to be on this vehicle in this turret position. So I kind of like start molding it after the M3 Lee, but then about halfway through, I just end up happy with the way it looks, and I just stop work on it there. So then just moving backwards logically, I end up messing around with the top turret, and this one I am going to build the Panzer IV's turret design. I've actually built this turret design before, or at least something similar to it on a previous Sprocket build, so I did pull up a reference photo, but for the most part this was a lot easier than I thought. Although I actually don't end up messing with the back end of the turret at all, so that rear angle and just the back half of the turret is not totally accurate to the Panzer IV. But I don't mind. I think it actually looks better with the way it is. Again, I don't mind it being like a bit custom, bit bespoke. This turret is definitely larger than the Panzer IV turret was in real life, and it definitely, I'm not trying to make an excuse that they just took a normal Panzer IV turret and plonked it on here. This is definitely a custom, a new turret design, but just, you know, obviously inspired by Panzer IV. It's also at this time that I'm really starting to think about what calibers of guns I want in all these positions. I definitely want 37mm guns on the smaller turrets, because, you know, Germany would have 37s, and as would America, right? It makes sense for both. Because both the nations that I'm combining here, 37mm guns make sense for both of them. And then for the large gun on top, I'm going to go with the Panzer IV, the 75, the Pak 40, specifically the L43, because the L48 doesn't come in until 44, so it's like kind of a later one, whereas the 43 is like the initial version of the Pak 40. The Tigers 88 did come across my mind. Like, it did. There was a moment where I considered maybe I should put the 88 on here. I end up spending a lot of time shaping and designing these turrets, mostly because there is no capability as of yet, as far as I know, in the geometric internals for Sprocket to copy and paste turret designs. So I could not just build a turret and then just copy it to the other side. I actually had to build this turret twice, which means, technically speaking, yes, they're both not even close to being identical. They look very similar. They have pretty much the same number of points and lines and all that, but yeah, the shape is not the same for either of them, which does piss me off slightly internally, but hey, we just gotta move on. So then if I've got the shapes of all the guns and all the turrets of the vehicle in place, now it's time to actually implement the guns. I decide first and foremost to put the Pak 40 into both the sponson mount on the front of the tank and then also on the turret on the roof. I decide that the normal default Sprocket mantlet doesn't look great on the Panzer IV's turret, or doesn't just doesn't quite look right on the Panzer IV's turret the way it is, so I decide to design a custom mantlet. Specifically, I decide to just make the Panzer IV's mantlet. I just decide like, hey, let's go all in, you know, we're making a Panzer IV, might as well make a Panzer IV. So I just straight copy the entire mantlet design of the Panzer IV. And when I'm building the Pak 40 for the tank, I also look at real photos and I actually try to genuinely recreate the Pak 40. I also look it up on Wikipedia and I try to find the shell length, the barrel length. Like, I actually really try to accurately recreate the Pak 40 for this tank. And yeah, I'm very happy with the results. So happy, in fact, that I copied the exact same Pak 40 design down on the sponson. But now that I'm building the turrets and I'm making the guns, I start thinking about where like the other crew members are gonna sit. So I start thinking more about like where hatches are gonna be, where crew members are gonna be, sort of more of those, you know, decorative items. Then I want to do the closing up side panels, again, like the Nuba has. It's kind of partway through modeling this that I realized again that like, well, hold on, if the whole point of this was for me to build like a cool, unique, interesting tank to show off the new track mechanics and the track tension sag mechanics, like why am I building a tank that's gonna cover up the suspension? I kind of make a consensus, and also the Nuba like also has this track skirts, so to speak. It's not a completely encasing skirt system like, for example, you know, Churchill or Matilda or something like that. So I figure I can still mostly get away with this. But I mean, also just generally, like, it looks cool, does it not? Also, at this point, I act on another idea that I sort of had for this tank as I was designing it, which is a sponson, side sponson machine gun positions. As if this tank already did not have enough guns on it. But of course, what else is a land ship than just as many guns as you can physically fit on your tank? Yes, it's overkill. Yes, this thing is going to have a crew of like 20, but is that not the fun of this? So I start building out sort of the sponson positions, and this I definitely just imagine there being machine guns. Already, like, I'm kind of realizing as this build is going that I don't actually have a single machine gun turret on this land ship, which is very uncharacteristic. Most land ships usually have a bunch of machine gun turrets and then maybe one cannon turret, and then the one turret on the roof that is like the proper cannon for the vehicle. So I realized that this thing is missing quite a lot of machine guns, and this thing is not American enough. This thing is not falling for the cult of the machine gun as hard as it needs to be for being a slightly German, slightly American inspired land ship vehicle. So I'm gonna make space for that, and we're just gonna put some simple machine gun ports in there. For the time being though, I'm just gonna be doing some face cleanup with all the splitting that I was doing to make the sponson turret on the right side of the vehicle. There's just all these extra faces and points and stuff, and it's just starting to annoy me, so I just go through manually and correct a lot of this. There's a lot of this work that I'm cutting out. Trust me, I am not showing you guys all. This build took me all of yesterday. Like, I built this as of recording this voiceover. I built this yesterday, and it took me all day. Genuinely, it's what I was doing the entire day. And especially with the turrets, those two rear turrets took me forever to get right. I end up totally resizing them later in the video. Like, it's just, it gets really, really dicey. So these spawn positions are pretty simple. I don't really feel like I need to go too crazy with them. I did consider doing something like I did with the front sponson, where I put like little turrets in there, and then that way the little machine guns can actually like traverse left and right and actually have some movement to them, but it's just above and beyond that I don't think is necessary for this video. And also, those ball machine gun mounts, I mean, they are ball mounts, and so it's kind of implied that they're gonna have traverse azimuth built into them. So I just don't end up worrying about it. I just stick the machine gun positions in there, and we'll worry about the rest later. And down here, you see me enacting on the new idea I had for the hull-mounted cannon. I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, that cannon, the cannon barrel just sticks out way too long. Having another Pak 40 way at the front of the tank, it just doesn't look right. Like, it looks cool, but it doesn't look like practical. Like, I don't think this is a decision that they would actually make. Especially in the interwar, a lot of nations have this general idea that the cannon barrel of a vehicle should not go farther than the hull of the vehicle. The Americans especially were very, very strict with this rule. But from what I can tell, it's a general, like, interwar concept. So I didn't think that would be plausible that they would do that. So then I started thinking, well, what are some other uses for a hull-mounted sponson gun? Started thinking about the B1 BIS, where that cannon down there was meant for bunker busting. Specifically, they actually, the idea was that the cannon was mounted low enough to the ground that it would make it easier to snipe through the vision holes of bunkers. Yeah, I don't know what the French were smoking when they thought of that, but it's an interesting idea, I'll give them that. But I ended up thinking, like, hey, this actually would make more sense to put a howitzer down here instead of like another anti-tank cannon. Like, we already have an anti-tank gun there on the PaK-40 on the roof, and then we've got anti-infantry, anti-light armor, maybe, cannons all around on these 37s. So why do we want another anti-tank gun down in the hull? So instead, I turned that hull gun from a PaK-40 to a PaK-37, and I just make it the short howitzer 75 on the early Panzer IVs. And I think this is a really good move. I think it makes a lot of sense, both like in design and everything, and I also think it looks better. And then it's time to actually properly model the guns in this tank. So I actually end up taking the specifications for the American 37s for this, because again, this is meant to be like some mixture of an American, German, Nuberfahrzeug, land ship, M3 Lee, something. This tank is German. Like, I ended up putting German marks on it and everything, and obviously the turret is just straight up a Panzer IV turret. So this tank is German, but I'm still taking a lot of inspiration from American stuff, and I figured it would just be neat if the 37s on this were the American 37s. I don't know, I just thought that they would. So the actual specifications for the breech and the length of the shell and all these things, I took from just Googling very quickly. I'm not going too crazy into historical accuracy for this, but just taking like very quick measurements and very quick notes. And of course now we start getting into volumetric troubles. Actually fitting these guns into the tanks starts becoming problematic. Now that I actually do the proper breech size and everything, I have to make some adjustments on the fly and reshape the turrets. These two turrets on the back here, I end up working on these for a very, 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 very long time. I think if there's one element of this entire build, like one singular thing that I spent the most time on, it was these two turrets. Specifically because I don't know if it was a bug or something with the geometric internals, but particularly on the second turret, I could not get the gun to fit properly and have enough room for elevation and depression and everything in that turret. I don't know why. Usually the geometric internals is pretty good about, yeah, if the hitboxes, those red hitboxes for elevation, depression, whatever, are not touching anything, then generally it works. But for whatever reason in this turret specifically, and then especially in the other turret, there was nothing blocking it. Like, there was nothing there. The hitboxes were totally unobscured, and yet for whatever reason, like, the game was just saying, no, you can't do that. Like, no, that something is in the way. And I kept looking at the obstructed thing, and it was telling me that plate was in the way. It's like, what plate? It's inside the turret. Like, plate structure, what are you talking about? It's inside the turret, everything is fine. Look, this front turret, I was able to get it pretty much instantly. I just expanded the back, and then boom, it fit. And then that first turret, I managed to get it fit. I even managed to give it 45 degrees of elevation, which is crazy. But I think that makes sense. That makes me start thinking, like, oh, maybe those turrets on the back are kind of more for, shooting at planes. But they're 37s, right? That's not really an anti-aircraft round. But, maybe, who knows? Maybe I'll turn them into 37mm autocannons later on. And those are, anti-aircraft turrets on the back. I don't know. But either way, yeah, that first turret, I can get insane elevation out of it, which is cool. And I was super excited to do that for this second gun here. And this second turret that I'm messing with right now, this one, I spend hours and hours and hours and hours. I'm seriously not kidding. I spent way too long trying to get this turret to work the same as the other one, and I didn't understand it. The two turrets, although not identical, are the same design, but for whatever reason, the mantlet on this second one just would not sit in correctly. I'm generally on this for hours. I end up grabbing both turrets and scaling them both way up just so I can make sure, I can guarantee that there is enough room in here. But again, that first turret is fine. It seems great. It's got room for elevation, depression. Everything seems great. But then that second turret is just, for whatever reason, I don't get it. To this day, I still don't know why. It just didn't like it. It just didn't want to work. And so I literally end up pausing the recording and then just end up spending more and more hours and hours and hours on that. And then eventually I get it working. And yeah, it's just through bloating the turrets way larger than they realistically needed to be. Although, to be honest, they still end up pretty small, cramped turrets. and just making shit fit. Now I feel like I've got the guns in place, I've got the turrets in place, it's finally time to put the crew in place and to figure out where everyone is going to be sitting in this thing. A lesson for me in a tank may look like it has enough room, but once you put guys in there, you start to realize how much room your tank actually has. I debated creating like a proper driver's position for this guy, like adding a seat and gas pedals and all these things like I did in my Belgian tank, but again, I just figured I have spent so much time shaping this tank, modeling those damn turrets on the back. Like, I have sunk so much time into this tank already just getting it to where it is now. I just want to put the crew members in here and be done with it. Definitely working intimately with this crew member system has showed me that I would like. Hamish, I would really enjoy if you could right-click on the little white circles and then use the blue, green, and red arrows to direct them, much the same way that you can with every other part and component in the game. Because yeah, just free mousing it was so many times where you would stare at the figure like sideways on, and then you would move his hand into where you think is the right spot, and then you would turn the camera and then realize that you also accidentally pushed it like way forwards or way outwards, or yeah, there's just a lot of like moving a limb, spinning your camera all the way around to the other, like viewing him from a totally perpendicular angle, and then puppeting him a little bit, and then moving again, turning 90 degrees, puppeting him a little bit. Like, it's just increment, turn, increment, turn, increment, turn, increment, turn, where I would just like to just put him where I want him to be. Generally speaking, I actually didn't have too much trouble like getting all the guys in their proper positions in this tank. Obviously, like, room was a constraint, especially in the little turrets, but by far the part that I had the most trouble with was the sponson gun, which makes sense. It was a very, very cramped position. As you can see, I have to increase the height of the entire hull, I think twice, and then thus the height of the hull machine gun and everything. Again, I think about twice, just so I can get the guy to fit in there and sit in there properly. But I eventually end up getting it working, and then later on in the build I end up changing his position because I realized that having him sit directly behind the gun, where that 75mm shell is going to eject out of the gun and just hit him straight in his chest, is not great. And also, if I want to get a separate loader for this gun, which I do, because M3 Lee and a lot of those sponson mounted guns, they actually did have separate loaders. I need to make room for him, so instead of having this crew member guy like sitting directly behind that sponson gun, I eventually move him over to the side and make room for a loader. This turret was by far the easiest one because it was actually big enough to properly fit a traditional 3-man turret crew, which is pretty awesome. I did have to make a small exception here where I had to make a hole in the back of the turret so that the commander's head could peek through into the cupola, which I think was an awesome. I actually liked that I had to do that. I liked that little detail, that little bit of thinking that I had to employ there. But yeah, I really do love, especially in the turret and things like this, and I get more into it later on as I go further, but I really do like the being able to position the crew members like any way you want. I like the individual limb manipulation, I really do, because I like you can pose them as well. It's not just getting them to where you can fit all their limbs in the right spot to position them properly, but also I like being able to pose them, and you can have like the guy actually properly gripping the traverse mechanism and the elevation mechanism. You can have the guy properly holding, like, you can have the loader properly holding like a shell ready to throw it into the gun and stuff like that. And yeah, that to me was just really, really cool. So then we're on to cosmetics. The tank is pretty much functional. It's got crew members. They're all manning the different components of the vehicle. All the turrets are there. They all spin. Everything works. Now it's time to put in sort of the decoratives, doing like basic engine hatches. I take inspiration from, say, like a Tiger here with the engine deck. I want to put a big hatch on the top so you can open it up, take the engine out. I want to put a radiator cooling vent, or a radiator cooling cap there on the top there. Put 2 little bins at the top. I think they just look cool, and also maybe you could have like tools or spare parts or something in there. Tools on the back, very basic. Like, this is very basic. This is by far not my best work, but again, like, at this point I had spent hours, like I had spent the whole day modeling this tank, and I was just like, yeah man, like I just need to make it look presentable, make it look good, make it look detailed. I was not so like feverishly thinking about every little component like I usually do. Again, maybe one day this tank would be worth a revisit. I do try to think about putting the fuel filler caps in the positions on the tank where the actual fuel tanks were, like where I positioned the fuel tanks internally. I tried to put the fuel filler caps like roughly in that same spot on the outside, so the fuel filler caps actually lead to the fuel tanks. That's something that I like doing, just those little extra bits that, you know, just make stuff make sense. In fact, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it too, I actually didn't even customize the armor profile of this vehicle at all. Perhaps I'll take some questions or comments down below if you guys are interested in pitching in on how much armor you guys think this thing should have. Should this thing be like a proper heavy tank, or should it be like a T-35 type thing where like it's a land ship and we'll call it a heavy tank, but in reality it does not have that much armor. So yeah, let me know, would this, you guys want this to like actually be a proper like hard to kill land ship, land fortress, or should this be like a glass cannon, like not as strong as it looks, and therefore, you know, doesn't make it very far in actual service? Whenever I build tanks, I always like to debate that, like, is this a tank that is actually good and saw success and like made it through whatever war it was built for, or is this a tank that was designed and everything, but then after trials or after light usage they realized it sucked and it did not survive any longer? This is the kind of tank that, personally, I would imagine this, I'm imagining this more like a T-35, where they built it, they were like, hey, it's a land ship, this is like a heavy tank, this is going to be amazing, and then after combat experience they realize, oh, like it's way too confusing, there's way too many people to operate it, it's way too big, it's too easy of a target, and the armor is too thin because it's still the interwar period and we can't make tanks with like actually good thick armor. And so this thing actually like does not work as well as we thought it would. And so it's a dead-end design, it fails. It doesn't actually end up being very successful. And doing some final suspension tweaks to make sure this thing actually has, like, it's not super stiff, although this thing being a land ship, it probably would be very stiff, but I wanted to give the wheels at least some flex, some dampening, some element of suspension, rather than just being totally stiff. So I end up fleshing that out just a little bit. I don't change any of the automotive components. Like, I know I should have like tweaked the transmission and the engine and all that, but frankly, like, there's no eras in this current build of Sprocket, you know, with the geometric internals, so it's not like the tank will perform differently at different eras. Like, I couldn't set this to the interwar era and then experience all the debuffs in power, engine power, transmission power that gives you. So the tank just performs well as it is, and again, I was so ready to finish this up that for the day that I did not think that it, like, hey, as long as it drives, like, it seems to drive pretty good as it is right now, so I'm not gonna bother like tweaking with the engine and the transmissions and all that, because then it's also going to start changing around the size of all this stuff and it's just going to be bad. And yeah, this is kind of the type of thing that I'm messing with all throughout this build. Again, I'm cutting a lot of it out just for your own sanity and frankly mine as well, but yeah, there was a lot of that kind of stuff in this build, specifically of just redesigning crap and going back through, and something that I spent, you know, so much time molding just properly, just correctly, so it's all like a tight, proper fit, and then I add some new thing, I edit some new element of the design, and then all of a sudden, you know, that thing doesn't fit anymore, and then I have to go back and remodel crap again to make everything fit every single time, especially when you mess with the interior, when you add crew, when you add the ammo, when you add the gun sizes, all that stuff, it just messes with everything. So I would really recommend, for Sprocketeers out there, I would really recommend, specifically for your guns, get your guns sorted out first. Like, I don't know, just like put a turret on the side of your build and then put a gun in it, and then make the gun the size that you want in that turret so you have a rough idea of how much room you need, and then start building and shaping your hull. Because yeah, it's just, if you do what I did and you build the entire tank and then start messing with all the guns and stuff, it's gonna suck. Here's me taking advantage of that posability that I really liked, like I said, with the freeform crew positioning, for both the loader of the 75 down on the hull and then also the loader of the 75 in that top turret, the Pack 40 and the Pack 37. I generally wanted to model the loaders like holding a shell to kind of just give a demonstration of, you know, how the loading works on the tank and what it would look like with a guy, you know, holding a shell actively, and I thought it was really cool. I really liked doing that. And then yeah, ammunition stowage for all these tanks was a bit of a challenge to figure out, but with all the tanks, with all the turrets, I just end up doing the same thing, where we just put ammunition along the edge of the turret ring, and that way it is easy for the loader to grab it, and it's just, I don't have to think about bins and how does the loader crawl out from under the turret ring and reach those sponson bins or something like that. Any other ammunition layout would have like introduced a lot of questions that I just would not have wanted to bother answering. So I just put these ammunition racks in the turret ring itself, right there for the loader to grab, nice and easy. I think I also ended up putting some rounds on the wall of the turret here too, because again, I didn't put any hatches on the side, on the turret walls, so I don't have to worry about ammunition blocking the hatches or anything like that. So I end up putting ammo on the walls of the turret. Think it makes sense. And yeah, you can say like that's a stupid idea, like that's like, you know, that ammo is going to get hit very easily and it's going to go up. Yeah, I know, tanks have flaws. Sorry about that. We cannot all make perfectly amazing and flawless tanks. Again, I personally think that tanks are cooler because of their flaws. Like, I think tanks are more interesting with their flaws. And with that, every single cannon on the vehicle becomes functional, and it's pretty much time for what I would consider to be the final steps, which is painting and decorating. There was a small bug here. I'm not entirely sure why or how it happened, but there was a small bug where I could not apply paint for some reason. I end up reloading the tank and trying again, and then it ends up working. I really wanted to do like an early war German camouflage scheme with the Panzer Gray and Brown, like what the 38Ts would have had in the early war, like Invasion of France, Invasion of Poland type camos. But sadly, there's no preset camo that looks anything like that, and then there's also, I don't have a camo like that downloaded at the moment. So I just decided to make my own, just generic Panzer Gray. So I bring the whole thing up to a volume of gray that I think makes sense, and then I start tweaking the blue, adding a little bit of blue to it, because as we all know, the Panzer Gray, it's a very unique color. It's not just gray, like it is sort of that gray-blue color. And then putting on there what, I'm not mistaken, are like the early war German markings, where it's just the simple white cross. Putting that everywhere on the tank that I think makes sense. And then I'm just going to plot some very, very basic numbers on here. I'm not going to do like any German regiment markings or armored division markings or anything like that. Just, again, I really would like to get this done over with. Not that I'm like upset with it or hate it or whatever, but again, I had been doing this all day and I just wanted to, you know, move on with my day. At this point now, it's like 8 o'clock at night at this point of the footage. So yeah, I just wanted to just throw on whatever would make it look nice and what I liked. And then I will deal with the rest later. Again, if we so desire, I can revisit this tank, but yeah, just some basic paint, basic logos, and basic numbers, just to convey that this is a German tank. So then for the final test drive, I basically just go nuts. Again, in this current version of Sprocket, they got rid of scenarios and everything, so there's no way I can test this against other tanks. Although, like I said earlier, seeing that I didn't really bother with configuring this thing's armor at all, this thing would probably not fare very well against other tanks. But yeah, pretty cool that I got all those individual cannons working. It was very satisfying to drive around in circles and shoot all the cannons all at once. I know you can set the individual cannons to be like certain fire groups and things like that. I did not bother with that because, again, it was late at night and I just wanted to make sure everything worked. And then, yeah, I kind of forgot as I was testing this and I was so infantilized by all the different cannons all working and doing their thing, I totally forgot that the whole point of this build was to look at the new track tension stuff. And so I take the side skirts off and then drive it around again and take a proper look at all the cool track tension, track sag elements that have been added to the game. And yeah, it looks Hamish, it looks beautiful, it looks amazing. It is such an awesome feature for Sprocket. I think it is like easily gonna take so many builds to the next level. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Just looking at the raw footage again, this took me 7 hours and 23 minutes to build from the moment I started recording to the moment I stopped recording, and that's just how long the raw footage is. That does not include all the times that I paused the recording specifically to work on those 2 turrets on the back. So overall, I'm very, very happy with this tank. I definitely think maybe one day in the future it might be worth revisiting, potentially on stream. If you so care to, follow me on Ed320 Live, and you guys can get a peek in whenever I do live stream. I'm actually, as of recording this voiceover, I'm supposed to stream. Like, it's currently 4 p.m. and I'm supposed to get started on a stream, so I'm gonna go do that. But otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to get more notifications on when I upload on this channel, or at least check out another video of mine since the algorithm sees that the same as subscribing. Join my Patreon if you haven't already, and you get to support my production of videos and help me fund cool trips to museums and things, cool trips to go film awesome videos, books for research, all sorts of fun stuff. Your money going directly back into the channel to support this channel and what I do. Thank you so much for watching, and this has been the Geometric Internals update for Sprocket. Let me know what you guys want to see next on this channel, and thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye!